We live in interesting times. For the headlines. Children across the globe join a million-strong global climate strike, heeding the rallying cry of teen activist Greta Thunberg and demanding adults take action to stop environmental disaster. Parts of southeast Texas are facing life-threatening flash flooding after Tropical Depression Imelda dumped close to 36 inches of rain in some areas. Meanwhile, 2 deaths have been linked to the storm. And Amnesty International accused Hong Kong police of using excessive force against pro-democracy protesters. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. And now to the news. Major protests are kicking off across Australia as thousands of students skip school to demand urgent action on climate change. Emmy Capilita Roja reports from Brisbane.
A worldwide call for action has started today, Friday, September 20, fighting for one essential cause, protecting the environment to save the future of mankind.
Aboriginal land! Now!
What do we want?
Climate action!
When do we want it?
Now!
The global climate strike commenced today in several parts of the Australia-Oceania region in the Asia-Pacific, with over 150 countries expected to participate for a week. Citizens of the world are stepping up to support young climate strikers and defend their future. Inspired by an idea from teen activist Greta Thunberg, people of all ages and races are expected to strike and take to the streets across the planet to raise awareness of the climate crisis. In Australia, huge crowds gathered in cities across the country, including Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, Brisbane, and more. Demonstrations also took place in other areas of the Asia-Pacific, such as Thailand and the Philippines.
Today, it seems that the only people standing on the wrong side of history on this issue.
According to GQ Australia, the idea of climate strike originated in August 2018 when 15-year-old Greta Thunberg refused to come to class and chose instead to sit outside Sweden's parliament. She became the focal point of a youth movement that went on to spread across the world. Some organizations and businesses took the strike online as well, with websites launching a digital climate strike to raise more awareness of the aggravating climate crisis and inspire more people to get involved in this call for action.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate action! Now!
Reporting for Eagle News International, this is Emmy Capilita Roja, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Emmy. Meanwhile, children across the Asia and the Pacific kicked off what are said to be the largest global climate protests in history, demanding adults act now to stop environmental disaster. From Sydney to Seoul, Manila to Mumbai, children heeded the rallying cry of fellow teen activist Greta Thunberg and shot their textbooks in a collective call to action. In Australia, more than 300,000 kids, parents, and supporters rallied. Organizers said more than double the turnout at climate strikes in March, and among the first of 5,000 events planned worldwide by a movement dubbed Fridays for Future.
Aboriginal land!
Well, the younger a person is, the more that the changing climate will impact them as they grow and the less of a voice they're given today. Considering we have such a short amount of time to turn this issue around, it's vital that young people are at the forefront of this conversation because they will be impacted more than anyone else.
I think this is the most important issue of our time, and I'm here for my children's future. I think it's that important.
In India, school children rallied in New Delhi and Mumbai.
It is not a lie. Don't let our people die. Climate change is not a lie.
Don't let our people die.
Climate change is not a lie.
Don't let our people die.
Now, in Australia, while some local authorities, schools and business encourage people to take part in the strikes, some have also warned that absences must be explained. Many Australian students remained undeterred. Australia is one of the world's largest coal exporters and continues to approve massive new mines that bring jobs and have spurred 3 decades of uninterrupted economic growth. But it has also suffered the compounding effects of climate change. Recent years have brought historic droughts, more intense bushfires, devastating floods, and the blanching of their Great Barrier Reef. More than 5,000 events, as mentioned earlier, are planned worldwide. This will culminate in a massive rally in New York, where 1.1 million students from around 1,800 public schools have been given permission to skip classes. And here are London residents, including children, and they're joining the million-strong global climate strike, heeding the rallying cry of Greta Thunberg, the teen activist, and demanding adults to take action to stop environmental disaster. And protests are also well underway in major cities across Central and Eastern Europe. The continent are packed with protesters. Fridays for Future and other organizations gathered here at Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, also calling for action on climate change. And these are scenes from Vanuatu. In Vanuatu, climate change is likely to impact all sectors, especially agriculture, water, coastal and marine resources, and infrastructure, as well as tourism. Agriculture is entirely rain-fed and is susceptible to changes in rainfall distribution. The protests have been organized by young people around the world who are part of the Fridays for Future campaign. And as we have seen earlier, students have walked out of their schools on Friday to demand their political leaders to take urgent action to address climate change. Climate activist Greta Thunberg will participate in the protests in New York City, where 1.1 million students have been given permission to skip school to join in. A 7th victim of the extreme weather conditions that battered parts of Spain last week was located in Alicante province. Here's Mark Julius Aala for this developing story.
We have an update on the torrential rains and floods that hit the southeastern part of Spain. The death toll has now risen to 7. This after the discovery of the body of a missing 66-year-old Dutch national, according to local officials. The alarm was raised on Sunday after a man was sucked into flood water in a canal at Dolores. It's a town 40 kilometers southeast of Alicante. The body, matching a description by the Dutchman's family, was recovered in San Fulgencio village, several kilometers away. Torrential rains battered the area between Wednesday and Sunday. It caused widespread flooding and leaving many areas cut off. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes with help from the army. Reporting from Madrid, Spain, I am Mark Julius Aala, and I am 1 with 25.
Meanwhile, officials in the Houston area were preparing high-water vehicles and staging rescue boats as Tropical Storm Imelda moved in from the Gulf of Mexico. We have Jane Rogel reporting from Houston.
Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States, and today the city braces itself for the tropical storm Imelda. While devastation similar to 2017's Hurricane Harvey is not expected, forecasts predict 8 to 12 inches of rain through Friday. Galveston and some Houston schools have canceled classes, and Houston's police chief warns about the flooding hazard and advises residents to avoid unnecessary travel.
As for Texas weather, it's very unpredictable. One day it is hot and sunny, and the next day it's freezing cold. Same thing, it's sunny, and then like 30 minutes or 5 minutes later, it can be raining on the other side of the street. But one thing I can say about Imelda is, when you see tropical depression, tropical storm turning into a hurricane, the first thing you see people do is always board up their windows. And I'm thinking, why are people boarding up their windows? Because if you don't have a good roof, there's no need in boarding up your windows, because that's the first thing that's going to go with those winds. So I always tell everyone, make sure that your roof is not leaking, and you have a really good roof on your house. That way you don't have those problems. Windows can always be replaced, if they break out, but I've never seen windows breaking out because of a hurricane unless a tree has gone in it. But the roof you always see. There's always roof damage, shingles flying everywhere. So I think that's real important when you're doing anything when it comes to a storm, is always making sure wherever you live, whether it's an apartment complex or whether it's a house, you always make sure that the roof is nice, secure, and not leaking.
Stay tuned to Eagle News for further updates on Tropical Storm Imelda. Reporting from Houston, Texas, I'm Janie Rahel for Eagle News Always Want B25.
Meanwhile, as we follow the developing story, parts of Southeast Texas are already facing life-threatening flash flooding after Tropical Depression Imelda dumped close to 36 inches of rain in some areas. Forecasters are saying the rainfall totals caused by Imelda could rival the record-breaking amounts from Hurricane Harvey, which hit the Houston area in 2017 and saw totals of around 51 inches in some areas. Officials are dealing with impassable roadways, downed trees, power outages, hundreds of high water rescues, and in one small town, a hospital evacuation. At least 2 deaths have already been linked to the storm. A man pulled from a submerged van in East Harris County died, according to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez in a tweet. In Jefferson County, a man was electrocuted and drowned while trying to move his horse. As of Thursday evening U.S. time, Houston police recovered more than 200 abandoned vehicles from city roadways, and hundreds more vehicles remain stranded on highways and streets, according to HPD Chief Art Acevedo during a news conference. As of Thursday evening, Houston police recovered more than 200 abandoned vehicles. More rainfall is expected throughout the region, with a flash flood warning in effect until 7 a.m. Friday U.S. time. Malaysia said it will raise pressure on its Southeast Asian neighbors to find a solution to recurring outbreaks of smog-belching forest fires in Indonesia, as air quality plummeted and more schools closed. Now, blazes to clear agricultural land in the archipelago are sending toxic haze across Southeast Asia, with Jakarta's efforts to fight them using water-bombing aircraft and thousands of security forces proving futile. The Indonesian fires are an annual problem during the dry season, but this year's are the worst since 2015 and have added to concerns about wildfire outbreaks worldwide, exacerbating global warming. Nearly 2,500 schools were closed across Malaysia on Thursday, including almost 300 in the capital Kuala Lumpur, as were hundreds of Indonesia's Sumatra Island and the Indonesian part of Borneo, where the vast majority of fires are burning. Meanwhile, Malaysia carried out cloud seeding, which involves using chemicals in a bid to induce rain.
Guarantee is that the government is ready to do cloud seeding whenever it is possible. Whenever the cloud situation allows, we will do cloud seeding. So to bring temporarily relief to people who are suffering under this haze situation. As a country, we will not be able to overcome transboundary haze issue if whatever that we do here. So we need cooperation in the international level, in the regional level, and we believe that all the countries in ASEAN would like to solve this problem.
Meanwhile, Singapore's skies were clearer Friday and air quality improved as smog from Indonesian forest fires drifted away, easing fears that this weekend's Formula One race may be affected. On Friday, the skies were largely clearer with only a light haze over the city, while air quality improved to a moderate level of around 60 on the National Environmental Agency scale. A reading between 101 and 200 indicates unhealthy air quality. The wind direction could, however, still change ahead of the weekend and push smog back over Singapore. F1 organizers say they have a contingency plan if the haze worsens and have been stocking up on face masks to protect against pollution, which spectators can buy at the circuit. A new report by the world's largest humanitarian network warns that the number of people needing humanitarian assistance every year as a result of climate-related disasters could double by 2050. The cost of doing nothing, published today by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or IFRC, estimated that the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance as a result of storms, droughts, and floods could climb beyond 200 million annually, compared to an estimated 108 million today.
Our Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers speak of parched landscapes after recurrent droughts and families' crops, homes and livelihoods washed away by floods and cyclones. I hear of islands, communities under threat, of needless deaths during heat waves in major world cities. We are facing a climate crisis and we are experiencing firsthand what does it mean climate change and its impact on community, especially on the most poor and vulnerable. The report we are presenting today is the first attempt to assess the current and future cost of the humanitarian response to climate-related crisis. For the first time, we can see just how much worse things could get. But the analysis also demonstrates that it doesn't have to. By 2050, 200 million people every year could need international humanitarian aid as a result of a cruel combination of climate-related disaster and the socio-economic impact of the climate change. This is nearly twice the estimated 180 million people who need help today from the international humanitarian system because of floods, storms, droughts, and wildfires. And even by 2030, which is only a decade away, this number could increase almost 50%. Normally, Red Cross and Red Crescent is not involved in politics. But here we are not talking about politics. Here we are talking about facts. Here we are talking about science. Here we are talking about lives of millions. So, honestly, I don't care who believes or not. I feel that it is my duty to work at community level because the people is aware, and then after, and this should be in every place of the world, the political leaders will feel that it is their own responsibility or they go home.
In other news, Beijing accused Washington of adding fuel to the fire over Hong Kong unrest on Thursday after leaders of the city's pro-democracy movement appealed directly to the United States lawmakers to exert pressure on Beijing. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi held a news conference on Wednesday with House members as well as Joshua Wong, Dennis Ho, and other Hong Kong activists to back the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act of 2019. Take a look.
This act sends a strong message to Beijing that today, in 2019, 30 years after the massacre in Tiananmen Square, Chinese authorities will not get away with using violence and intimidation to squash the fundamental freedoms, freedom of speech, of assembly, of demonstration, that are guaranteed by law to the people of Hong Kong.
And was broadcast in Hong Kong. There is no doubt that the hearing was watched closely by the Chinese government. We had almost 1 million views on the China Commission YouTube page alone. It is an honor to stand in solidarity with the pro-democracy activists here today, and with the millions of people standing up for their human rights and the future of Hong Kong. And so I am proud to stand in support of Hong Kong at this critical time in history. Thank you.
Hong Kong deserve a future of justice and autonomy and freedom from fear that they were promised in basic law and for which they have long been courageously fighting. The pro-Beijing leadership in Hong Kong must ensure a political system accountable to the people, including guaranteed universal suffrage, as has been mentioned, and investigating police violence.
U.S. congressional committees are due to start voting next week on the legislation supporting human rights in Hong Kong, with measures under consideration, including annual reviews of the Chinese territory's special economic status and the imposition of sanctions on those who undermine its autonomy. Beijing has repeatedly accused foreign forces of being behind the protests. A related bill under consideration would ban the sale of tear gas, rubber bullets, and other crowd control equipment to Hong Kong police after concerns that Western imports abetted their crackdown. Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said at a press briefing on Thursday that the U.S. should stop supporting violent radical forces and Hong Kong independent separatists and stop adding fuel to the fire to the words and deeds that damage the prosperity and stability of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Zhang also called for the U.S. to stop interfering in Hong Kong's affairs in any form. Meanwhile, this orchestra is performing Glory to Hong Kong at a mall. The protest anthem, penned by an anonymous composer, has quickly won a huge following among those pushing for greater freedoms in the semi-autonomous Chinese city. Meanwhile, Amnesty International accused Hong Kong police of using excessive force against pro-democracy protesters, in some cases amounting to torture, criticizing a disturbing pattern of reckless and unlawful tactics. Take a look. In a report based on interviews with nearly 24 activists, most of whom were hospitalized after their arrests, the global rights watchdog said the city's police officers routinely went beyond the level of force allowed by local law and international standards. Nicholas Beckalin, East Asia Director at Amnesty International, said, quote, "In an apparent thirst for retaliation, Hong Kong security forces have engaged in a disturbing pattern of reckless and unlawful tactics against people during the protests." He said this has included arbitrary arrests and retaliatory violence against arrested persons in custody, some of which has amounted to torture. The rights group backed calls for an independent inquiry into police brutality, a key demand of protesters, but one that has been rejected by government officials and police top brass. Hong Kong's police force dismissed Amnesty's findings and rejected allegations it had used excessive force. In a statement issued on Friday, police said their officers exercised a high level of restraint at all times in the use of force. China has said it is committed to the one country, two systems arrangement that ensures freedoms not enjoyed on the mainland, including right of assembly and an independent judiciary, and denies interfering. It has accused, however, foreign powers, particularly the United States and Britain, of fomenting the unrest and told them to mind their own business. Taiwan and Kiribati severed ties on Friday after the tiny Pacific nation decided to switch diplomatic recognition to China, the second defection to Beijing by one of Taipei's allies this week. Kiribati today officially notified us that it was cutting diplomatic ties with our country. That is according to Joseph Wu, Taiwan's foreign minister. Telling this to reporters at a hastily organized press conference, Wu hit out at Kiribati's decision on Friday, calling it deeply regrettable, adding all bilateral cooperation and aid projects would be immediately halted. Taiwanese diplomats would be withdrawn from Kiribati, whose envoys would be expected to do the same. The switch is another coup for Beijing, just weeks before it celebrates the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. On Monday, Taiwan announced it was cutting ties with another Pacific nation, the Solomon Islands, after learning its cabinet had voted in favor of changing its diplomatic recognition to Beijing. Kiribati's defection leaves Taiwan more isolated than ever, with just 15 nations left that recognize it. Beijing, meanwhile, praised Kiribati for cutting ties with Taiwan, saying it highly appreciates the decision to resume diplomatic relations with China. 7 states have now made a switch during President Tsai's tenure, during which China has also ramped up military drills and squeezed the island economically. In other news, although childbirth survival rates are a staggering success compared with the year 2000, one pregnant woman or her child still dies every 11 seconds from largely preventable causes, according to UN health experts. In a joint appeal for all nations to provide better medical care for all, the UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, outlined several ways to help protect the 2.8 million pregnant women and newborns who die every year. The recommendations tackle immediate and underlying problems, such as ensuring that midwives have water to wash their hands and helping teenage girls to stay in school longer, where there is less chance of them getting pregnant.
Well, the most dangerous period of life is when you're being born, the first month of life. And the majority of children under 5 die within that period. 1/3 within the first day and about 3/4 within the first week. These deaths are caused by being born too early, being born too small, or contracting infectious diseases, or being born with congenital anomalies. Now, when you survive the first month of life, then the causes of death change. So the causes of death for children under 5 are pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria. And these are very treatable diseases that can be treated with immunizations to prevent the disease, access to care and medicines, also good nutrition and safe water and hygiene.
If a girl is 15 in 2017, her lifetime risk, or her chance of dying of maternal cause throughout her lifetime, is about half of what it was in the year 2000. Additionally, what we're also seeing is that for all women, your cause of death, or what you will eventually die of, the proportion of those deaths that are now maternal, it's actually much declined as well. We're down to 9%, about 9%, down from about 26%. So we're really seeing some trends that are positive. What we're seeing now is that women are still dying of things like bleeding during childbirth, high blood pressure during childbirth, known as preeclampsia, or infections that are associated with pregnancy. But what's interesting is that the proportion of deaths that are due to women, for women, due to causes of related to pre-existing diseases, is actually on the increase. And this is what we call indirect maternal causes, and these are actually the hardest ones for health care providers to sometimes deal with, because they're hard to find and detect. Pregnancy is a time where women sometimes access care for the first time as well, and so they get diagnosed with things that they never knew they had. And then they and their healthcare practitioners and their healthcare professionals need to figure out how to manage those complications or those conditions during pregnancy. And that makes it a bit complicated to deal with.
All right, on a lighter note, here's Tyra Lu to take us to a snail-inspired water well in Japan. Tyra?
Water wells. They sound so mundane and insignificant, but behold the incredible stories behind its simplicity. like this ancient snail-shaped water well located in Tokyo's medieval Tama region towards the western part of the prefecture. I'm at the entrance of the Maimaizu well here in Hamura City in the western part of Tokyo. Join me as I go down to the bottom of this long winding pathway towards the well. Because of its spiral pathway, it was named after the snail, or as the Japanese call it, maimai, and so the birth of the Maimaizu water well. The well is already over 800 years old and has been here since the 13th century. It attests to the hardships of the people when trying to get water. History check. Digging a well vertically before the Edo period was very difficult. Hence, the method of Maimaizu well was developed, where it is dug in the center of a pit with the shape of an inverted cone. From the point of view of the well at the bottom of the pathway, this is what you will see. From Hamura City here in Tokyo, Japan, this is Sirenel Pililu for Eagle News International, and I am 1 with 25.
All right, we apologize for that headline. Anyways, thank you, Tyra. We'll be back with more news right after this break. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCB ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG.
All the time, in our community, in our country, around the world, events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Amazon chief Jeff Bezos pledged that the U.S. technology and retail giant will become carbon neutral by 2040 and encourage other firms to do the same in a bid to help meet the goals of the Paris Climate Accord 10 years early.
Number one, you're agreeing to measure and report your emissions on a regular basis. Number two, to implement decarbonization strategies in line with the Paris Agreement, which basically means that these are real things that you're doing in your business. And then third, with any remaining emissions that you cannot eliminate with real change, you are agreeing to do offsets that are credible. And what do we mean by credible offsets? We mean nature-based solutions. That's the key.
Amazon is also hereby announcing that it will work with companies upstream that deliver to Amazon, deliver all kinds of goods and services, to have those companies also decarbonize and reach the same goal.
It actually turns out that as you increase the speed of delivery, you have less carbon. That is counterintuitive, but the reason is that once you get to sort of one day and same day, you can't really do it by air transportation anymore.
Bezos said he had spoken with other CEOs of global companies and noted, quote, "I'm finding a lot of interest in joining the pledge." As part of the ramped-up effort, Bezos also said Amazon had agreed to purchase 100,000 electric delivery vans from vehicle startup Rivian to help cut its carbon footprint. Amazon previously announced a $440 million investment in Rivian. The first vans will hit the road in 2021, with the fleet to be fully operational in 2030. Amazon also pledged to invest $100 million on reforestation efforts in cooperation with the Nature Conservancy. Amazon said its new sustainability initiative would deal with all of its business operations, with reduced carbon in packaging, delivery, and its own energy use. Bezos' announcement came the day before a global day of demonstrations to demand action on climate change ahead of a UN summit on zero emissions on September 23. Now, the U.S. wants a peaceful solution to the crisis sparked by attacks on Saudi oil installations, according to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, after Iran raised the specter of an all-out war. Pompeo has blamed Iran for the dramatic weekend assault on two facilities, condemning an act of war which knocked out half of the kingdom's oil production. The rhetoric has raised the risk of an unpredictable escalation, but Pompeo said the U.S. was intent on finding a way out of the confrontation.
I think it's abundantly clear, and there is an enormous consensus in the region that we know precisely who conducted these attacks was Iran. I didn't hear anybody in the region who doubted that for a single moment. We are still striving to build out a coalition. I was here in an active diplomacy while the foreign minister of Iran is threatening all-out war and to fight to the last American. We're here to build out a coalition aimed at achieving peace and a peaceful resolution of this. That's my mission set. It's what President Trump certainly wants me to work to achieve, and I hope that the Islamic Republic of Iran sees it the same way.
The Houthis have earlier said they were responsible. However, they have also previously hit dozens of targets in Saudi Arabia, and their rapidly advancing arsenal has exposed the kingdom's vulnerability despite its vast military spending. The rebel group said Saturday's assault was launched from 3 locations inside Yemen using advanced drones with long-range capabilities. They also threatened the United Arab Emirates, a key member of the Saudi-led coalition fighting the Shiite rebels, with strikes against towers made of glass that cannot withstand one drone, in apparent reference to the glitzy cities of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. U.S. military planners weighing retaliation have reportedly prepared a list of Iranian targets, including the Abadan oil refinery, one of the world's largest, and Kark Island, the country's biggest crude export facility. According to the New York Times, other potential targets include missile launch sites and other assets of the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, along with bases near the Gulf. The United Nations said Thursday that experts had arrived in Saudi Arabia to investigate Saturday's attack at the invitation of the Saudi authorities. An American or Saudi military strike on Iran because of the weekend attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure would result on an all-out war, according to Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif in an exclusive interview on CNN. On Saturday, the Abqaiq facility and the Khurais oil field in Saudi Arabia were hit by attacks, which resulted in the temporary suspension of 5.7 million barrels per day of Saudi Arabia's crude oil production, or around 5% of global daily oil supply. Also speaking to CNN, Zarif rejected the possibility of negotiations with the U.S. unless Iran receives full sanctions relief. U.S. President Donald Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Energy Secretary Rick Perry all blamed Iran for the attack, despite a statement from the Iran-affiliated Houthi rebels in Yemen who claimed responsibility for the attacks. The The number of foreign workers in Saudi Arabia fell by over a fifth in the 30 months to end June due to high state levies and an economic slowdown, according to a report. Saudi Jadwa Investment said there was a net fall of 132,000 expatriate workers in the kingdom in the second quarter of 2019, taking the net outflow since the start of 2017 to nearly 1.9 million, a fall of 22%. The number of expatriate workers in the public and private sectors dropped from 8.55 million at the end of 2016 to just 6.66 million at the end of June this year. During the same period, however, the number of domestic helpers, who include maids and private drivers, rose by 33% to 3.11 million, according to Jadwa. Economic activity in Saudi Arabia, which pumps around 10 million barrels of oil per day, has been hit hard by crude prices crashing from mid-2014. Switzerland was among the first countries to begin deploying 5G, but health fears over radiation from the antennas that carry the next generation mobile technology have sparked a nationwide revolt.
5G, je pense que c'est vraiment maintenant une évolution qui est devenue inutile, c'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, si vous voulez voir des vidéos, YouTube, etc., eh bien vous avez tout ce qu'il vous faut sur votre portable, ça va tout à fait assez vite. Aussi, on a un problème énergétique par rapport à ces antennes 5G qui consomment beaucoup plus. Les portables aussi vont consommer beaucoup plus, donc on a cette problématique-là aussi.
A growing number of Swiss are voicing alarm at possible health effects from exposure to the electromagnetic rays radiating from the new antenna and are threatening to put the issue to a referendum in the country famous for its direct democratic system. But while no new antenna are being built in parts of the country, the operators are still converting existing 4G antenna for 5G use, something they can do without authorization. National carrier Swisscom thus says it expects 90% of the population to have 5G access by the end of the year. Opponents, meanwhile, warn that 5G poses unprecedented health and environmental risks compared to previous generations of mobile technology, and are urging authorities to place a full-fledged moratorium on the rollout. And the first Rugby World Cup in Asia kicked off Friday at a packed Tokyo Stadium as the game seeks to tap into a new fan base beyond its traditional heartlands in Europe and the Southern Hemisphere. A sea of fans cheered as Russian fly half Yuri Krishnarev got the first game underway against host Japan in Pool A, the opening act of the 6-week, 48-game tournament. Earlier at the opening ceremony, children representing the 20 competing teams belted out the World Rugby Anthem, World in Union, before former All Black skipper Richie McCaw brought in the glittering Webb Ellis Cup. The tournament, which culminates on November 2, promises to be one of the most open in history, with several teams considered capable of denying New Zealand an unprecedented third straight title. And we have more sports news from Ben Bernaldez. Ben?
USA Basketball has kept its #1 spot in the FIBA World Men's Rankings, even after a disappointing 7th place showing in the World Cup that ended earlier this week. It's now 9 years and counting in the top spot for the US, which has held the #1 ranking since winning the 2010 World Championship. World Cup champion Spain stayed #2, Australia leaped 8 points to #3, World Cup finalist Argentina rose 1 spot to #4, and World Cup bronze medalist France fell 2 slots to #5. FIBA's rankings take results from the most recent 8 years into account, which means the US is still reaping point benefits from the 2012 and 2016 Olympic gold medals and the 2014 World Cup title. Meanwhile, NBA Rookie of the Year Luka Doncic could still go to the 2020 Olympics after Slovenia on Thursday secured one of the final places in the qualifying tournament scheduled for next June. Doncic did not play in qualification for the 2019 World Cup, and the 2017 European champions failed to make the tournament in China. 7 nations secured Olympic berth at the World Cup, joining host Japan. The 4 remaining places will be decided in a 24-team tournament scheduled for June 23rd to 28th next year. 2/3 of the qualifying tournament slots had already been allocated to the highest-ranked sides not already qualified for Tokyo. The final 8 spots were allocated to the 2 highest-ranked nations in each of the basketball 4 global regions when the governing body of World Basketball FIBA announced its latest ranking on Thursday. Slovenia and Croatia secured the 2 European spots. China and Korea took the 2 Asian places. They were joined by Angola and Senegal from Africa and Mexico, and Uruguay from the Americas. Olympic men's basketball tournament, 12 teams already qualified. Japan, host, Spain, France, USA, Argentina, Nigeria, Australia, Iran. And in final qualifying tournament, 24, Angola, Brazil, Canada, China, Croatia, Czech Republic, Dominican Republic, Germany, Greece, Italy, Korea, Lithuania, Mexico, New Zealand, Poland, Puerto Rico, Russia, Senegal, Serbia, Slovenia, Tunisia, Turkey, Uruguay, and Venezuela. And those are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I am 1 with 25.
And a fitness event in Kissimmee, Florida for the 2019 Spartan Race. Here's Jay Rasquitas.
Weighted burpees, box jumps, and the gauntlet. These are all challenges in the Spartan Stadion Series that were implemented in the first ever city series here in Kissimmee, Florida. Let's get the deets from athletes here at the Spartan City Sprint. In an effort to break more city barriers, the Spartan Race continues its evolution of elite obstacle course racing. This year launched the first ever urban style series where contestants would experience running on pavements and natural terrain.
So this is the first of our urban series events, which is, trying to get people out from the communities. You don't necessarily need to bring your cars. You can just come out if you're local and whatnot. It's a very flat terrain race. We're using our stadium series events, which is a smaller trailer series. But the goal has always been to get people off the couch and to make people more active. Just trying to find different ways to really bring people into that, to make it more exciting, and finding different ways to keep people excited about it at the same time.
With the Spartan Race being a world-class product, runners from different walks of life became motivated after their first race.
This race attracted me really quick. Since the first race that I did, it was a super. Since that race, I was like, this is my thing. So if you haven't tried it, do your first one, and trust me, you're gonna be addicted to this thing. It's the best thing ever. That's what I can tell you right now.
Whether they were seasoned or beginners, running solo or as a team, the Spartan Race gave them an extra push in the right direction.
I like seeing all the people of different ages and different fitness levels being able to do the same things that I do, so it kind of motivates me to be able to do that as well.
I've been working out my life, so I was like, what better way to do something than try something out like this? So I've been doing it now. I'm on my 3rd trifecta.
And it looked fun, so I'm here to support him.
Signing off from the Osceola Heritage Park here in Kissimmee, Florida, I'm Jay Rasquitas, always 1 with 25.
And local sports may not have the spotlights of stadiums and arenas, but it can shine as a light for other sports enthusiasts out there. Our Eagle News correspondent Casey Lee Carrasco reports how the sports group is connecting with a community.
Las Vegas has become an attractive home for sports in recent years with the addition of Vegas Golden Knights, WNBA Las Vegas Aces, and soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. But Las Vegas has always been a place of enthusiasts for other sports like volleyball. where sports enthusiasts and co-commissioners Chris Magno and Aljamin Santos organize leagues for locals to join and meet others.
Leagues create an environment for adults and children both to be able to play in a safe and fun arena where they can grow, improve, and even make new friends. I think it's a great opportunity for kids and adults alike to have a sport that they enjoy and play where they can be looked at as an individual or as a team sport. In Vegas, we have seen volleyball grow from almost nothing to something this big. Having an adult league here in town, at least in my side of town, it has been amazing. It's grown from nothing to something huge.
So me and my business partner Amin, we just put our heads together and said, you know what? The same people show up every night that we play. Why not organize a league? We don't have any refs from outside come in. We actually call all the points ourselves, so they actually get the knowledge of the game more. So we're bringing volleyball competitive volleyball to Vegas, and also helping the knowledge of the sport grow. Well, for some of us are older. Our whole age spectrum varies, but the younger ones, they get to face some competition that's already been there, kind of done that. So they still get knowledge from it, and then the older ones can still get out and dust their shoes off and still get out and play with the younger crowd. So all in all, just a big group, and just get out there and have some fun.
Non-profit and feel-good philanthropists such as Kyler's Kicks, a program inspired by its owner, receives new and gently used shoes to give out to those in need. B-League co-founder Aljamin Santos stumbled on Kyler's Instagram page after seeing his photo on another local entrepreneur's Instagram page.
Kyler's Kicks, while scrolling through my Instagram, one of my friends, Dylan Sangley, who's the owner and founder of Designer ETC here in Las Vegas, and I read about Kyler's mission, and I related with him about his story, and I felt like him sharing his story and us as a league collaborating with him will be able to unite B-League and all the athletes and players with local charities and things like that to show that we're more than just a league, that we're all about the community and bringing up the sport in the city as a whole.
The reason why we started Kyler's Kicks is because I was stabbed in my chest over my shoes in school, and since then I had PTSD, and I no longer wanted that to happen to anybody else. So we wanted to start spreading kindness everywhere and making sure that what happened to me wouldn't happen to anyone else. So we started collecting, cleaning, and donating shoes, and we've given away over 25,000 pairs of shoes so far. The main message that I would like to share to everybody watching is kindness is like a light switch in a dark room. If you turn it on, the light eliminates all the darkness. So that's what we have to do with kindness, and we have to make kindness a habit. And if we have kinder minds, then we have a kinder earth. Sports leagues collaborating with our community organizations and everything is very important because it builds the kindness in the whole community and it brings everybody together.
With professional teams coming to the city, small local sports groups such as the B-League may become overshadowed by the professionals, but leave it to the local guys to make sure the community stays united for the greater good. From fabulous Las Vegas, I am Casely Carrasco for Eagle News, always one with 25.
Thank you, Casey Lee, and that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.